Hey guys, welcome to my 2025 Australian Grand Prix review where we will be reviewing the Australian Grand Prix.
Let's add that to the words of wisdom.
Seriously, Ferrari fans, I have a newfound respect for you. Every year you show up saying this year is our year, and within half a race, it suddenly switches to maybe next year is our year. It kind of reminds me of the fan base of another franchise team that we have. I mean, if you know, you know. But seriously, what went wrong with Ferrari? They were looking so strong on Friday in both of the practice sessions, and suddenly on Saturday, the pace has vanished. And everybody was thinking, yeah, maybe they've set up the car for the rain, so that's why they're slow and collie. So on Sunday, it rains, and everybody has their hopes up high. And Ferrari once again does not have a lot of pace. So apparently it turns out that between Friday and Saturday, Ferrari had to make certain changes to their car. Now initial speculation was, like I said, the wet weather setup, but it was not that. According to some reports, Ferrari had to raise their car a little bit to avoid any disqualification issues in the race. Because you need to understand, they have changed like 90% of their car from last year. They've gone with a different suspension on the front, so I'm assuming that they're going to need a couple of races to fine tune all of these things, and that's why we saw that. So the pure pace of the car is still a bit of a question mark, but according to Fred Vasseur, Ferrari and Mercedes' race pace was very similar, and we saw that with Leclerc making moves at the start. He was having a decent race and he was quick, but Ferrari's major problem in this race, like it always is, was their poor strategy call. Now on lap 44, everybody was more or less on slick tires, and then you saw the rain started to come. Now initially all the teams were like, the rain is going to be for 1 and 2 laps, so we're going to stick around and we'll probably get through this on the slick tires, so we don't have to pit for the intermediate tires. And immediately as the rain started falling, the sector 1 and sector 2 of the track were dry, but the sector 3 was quite wet, and initially all of the teams were just trying to push through it, but then you saw Norris and Piastri, both of them going off. So McLaren decided that we have to come in and pit, and they immediately pitted Norris for the intermediate tires. At the same time, Red Bull and Ferrari were like, no, we're going to stay out and take this gamble. Probably the rain is going to go away quickly. They tried to do it, but then later on Max also reported that it's getting heavily wet on the track now. So that's why he also ended up pitting for the intermediate tires. Ferrari should have also pitted at this time, but somehow they trusted their radar more, which said that there was not going to be much rain, and they told both of their drivers to not pit. Leclerc was suggesting to, split the strategies, put one car on the intermediate tires and put one car outside, but do something. But Ferrari did not do that, and at the end, when they had to pit, we had a safety car. They're going into the pits. The field is bunched up because of the safety car, so they just tumbled down the order, and by the time they were out, it was too late to do anything. Now, a lot of people were confused that why were they losing positions when they were pitting under the safety car? Because timing matters. When you immediately get the safety car and you're around the pit area, while the field is still bunching up, you can go into the pits, take that advantage and come out, and you won't probably lose position or two. But when it's been a lap or two of the safety car, the field is already closer, and now when you pit in, you will quickly lose out on positions. So timing matters, and Ferrari completely got that wrong and screwed over their drivers in the race. But this Ferrari project in general is going to take 4 to 5 races, because like I said, they have to still optimize their car. And if you're a pessimist, you might think, oh, next year is our year. But if you're an optimist, you would see McLaren last year. They were nowhere near the first 5 races, and they eventually started to climb up. So it's not that bad. Let's give a little bit of time, but don't get your hopes up too high. If I talk about Hamilton's debut, it was actually quite nice. You might feel depressed as a Lewis fan or a Ferrari fan, but I think it went as expected, because throughout the weekend, from practice session 1 to 2 to 3, he was slowly reducing his gap to Charles. Keep in mind, Charles is one of the best qualifiers on the grid, so that's a great progress for Lewis. And even in the race, in such confusing conditions, I know that they had a couple of weird conversations back and forth. He did well. I mean, he did not spin around, didn't have a moment, was keeping it on the track, and he was not as quick as he should be. But I think it was a good race from him without any catastrophic moments. There's still that communication with his race engineer though that needs working. And once again, I think 2 to 3 races should sort it out. Otherwise, they would have to look at something else. Because I've said it before and I'm saying it again, coming to a new team after 10-12 years, getting used to a Ferrari engine that he's never driven before, it's gonna take a while. Drivers in new teams do take time, and we saw that with Carlos Sainz, because he's named as one of the most adaptable drivers on the grid, because he switched so many teams and he gels along pretty easily. But this time you saw that he spun under the safety car and he was under the wall. Once again, he's only driven Renault engines and Ferrari engines in his career, if I'm not wrong. This is the first time he's driving a Mercedes engine. All of these different engines respond differently to throttle under different conditions, and you need time to get used to it. I'm going to come to Williams' performance in a while, but yeah, 4 to 5 races is something you have to give every driver, especially to the rookies who had such a bad time in the race, because you saw Hajar spinning out on the formation lap. That was absolutely crushing. The guy was crying, completely broken. He did a great job in quali. He even out qualified Liam Lawson. But to have that on your formation lap is absolutely embarrassing. And then on top of that, you have the senior most member in the Red Bull team making such statements. That's got to crush a man's soul, but I hope that he bounces back strongly. Jack Doohan, we saw him in Drive to Survive with Flavio. He was very scary. And once again, he also dropped the ball within the initial laps. So he already has that pressure of Franco Colapinto on his seat. So this race did not do any favors to the rookies. We saw Gabriel Bortoleto once again make it out of Q1 with the kick sauber, really great. But something happened to his suspension and he lost the car and he was into the wall out of the race. And so was Liam Lawson after so much hype and so much talk. He ended up in a DNF and his quali was even worse. And our favorite rookie also had a moment, Fernando Alonso, and he was out of the race. You don't see him do that, but I don't know. It was just a bad day because Stroll ended up in P6. He ran on a bit of a gravel that was on the track and it was just not in his control. But the two rookies that did make it to the end were Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman. Now, first of all, Ollie Behrman and Haas. I have no understanding of what this team is doing. I genuinely thought in preseason testing they were only doing long runs and they were not doing any quali runs and they were not showing their pace, but clearly they did not show their pace in the race as well because they were consistently last. A big departure from what they were last season, and on top of that they were using atrocious strategies. Initially when everybody was going to the slick tires, they decided to stay on the intermediate tires and they were like, we're going to stay out. After the lapped cars had overtaken the safety car, now at the end of the safety car they suddenly realized, no, we want to go back to slick tires, and then they pitted their drivers and then they came out and Behrman almost crashed into Maxwell, unlapping himself. Ocon 2018, if anybody remembers. That team is a mess right now. I mean, does using Ferrari engine also give you a bit of a Ferrari strategy brain? Because that's what it looked like. A lot of people wrote off Kimi Antonelli after his performance in qualifying. Actually, he damaged the floor of the car in Q1 and because of that he was losing 3/10 per sector. That's why he couldn't qualify well, but in the race he drove really well. He kept it clean for the most part. He had one moment in the initial part of the race and with so many rookies crashing, I was like, oh my god, is this guy also gonna eventually crash? But he didn't. He kept the car in one piece and he actually did some good overtakes. If anybody has followed his junior career, you know that he drives really well in the rain and he proved that. Ended up getting a P4 while starting from way back and took an advantage of these conditions. And I think Mercedes did a good job signing Kimi Antonelli. It's funny how one day can change so many things. Hajar and Bortoleto were one of the best performing rookies after the qualifying, but after the race, it was clearly Kimi Antonelli. Although you guys let me know in the comments, would you consider Lawson as a rookie in the line of all of these other rookies, or would you not consider him a rookie? Because he's had like 5-6 races in the previous season and a couple of races in the season before that. So I want to know if you'd consider Lawson as a rookie or not, because if you don't, then he made quite a few mistakes and literally everyone. I was on the live stream, I was doing a watch along for the race, which by the way you should join in the next race. Everybody was talking about how Yuki should have gotten that seat and I have been an advocate for that since a long time. Yuki put out such a beautiful performance. He qualified P5. He was holding that position for the longest part in the rain up until the last safety car that we had. That's where VCARB, in the usual fashion, decided to mess up the strategy and put him out of the points. You know, just because they are so far down the line, people don't focus on this team that much, but the amount of strategy goof-ups that they've had in general with Daniel Ricciardo before, Yuki, it's just crazy. I mean, how do they even manage to do this every single time? I don't know. But Yuki drove such a nice race. Honestly, he was one of the best drivers for me here. And he was actually very calm even when the team messed up massively. He was extremely calm during the quali. He was extremely calm on the radio after the whole mess happened in the race. Yeah, I think if we don't see Lawson stepping up the game, we'll have Yuki halfway through the season there, because ultimately Red Bull has no other option left now. Now coming to the top 3, George Russell had a very uneventful race. He got a very nice P3 podium. It reminded me of that 5-star meme that do nothing and you get stuff, and his race was quite uneventful because we didn't see him on the camera much, but he actually drove a nice race. That Mercedes was good in the rain. They did good strategy. Everything was spot on. Nothing was wrong and he got awarded for that. Max Verstappen, once again, we did see him make one mistake slightly. You don't see him do that. But apart from that, it was a faultless drive from him. He capitalized on the opportunity perfectly. and there is not much to complain about. But Max did get the most out of the weekend. I don't think a win was in contention regardless, because then McLaren is really, really good. And coming to that car, McLaren definitely has made a rocket ship, and if this was a dry race, I think they would have won by a much bigger margin. Now I think within a couple of initial laps, McLarens were already putting like 10, 12, 15 seconds on Verstappen, and they had already left him way behind. The tires on these cars barely degrade. Now there are two things. Either your car brings the tires into the working window very quickly. If that's the case, then your tires degrade early, or otherwise your tires take a while to come into the working window, but they last longer. Now teams usually oscillate between these modes. McLaren has gotten both of these parts sorted. Their tires come into the working window very quickly, and at the same time their tires virtually just don't degrade, and that's a major contributor to their pace. Of course that car is also amazing, but time and again we've heard that in this era of cars, if the tires are even slightly off the working window, it can massively affect the performance of your car, and McLaren just did that. They've gotten the tires sorted, and that's where a lot of their advantage could potentially come from. Both Norris and Piastri were driving an amazing race. Norris especially, I want to talk about him first because he got his starts right. He's definitely a changed man from the last season. Didn't bottle the start in extreme conditions. We had 3 safety car restarts and he did all of them perfectly, timed it very well, no complaints there. So he's definitely worked upon himself. A few moments here and there, but overall it was a great drive from him and he absolutely deserved to win. And if we come to Oscar, he was also doing a great job, especially he was closing the gap to Norris. He was rapidly quick too, but eventually he had that moment where he was stuck in the grass. Now I want to talk about Oscar here a little bit. You saw that that car was stuck in the grass, and normally the F1 drivers would try to get out a little bit, but if it doesn't, they would just get out and DNF. Piastri constantly tried to get out of that grass. Eventually he did, and then he went pitted for the new tires, and after the safety car restart really fought for the positions, and eventually from not being in the points he ended up in P9. So yeah, that was just great, just shows his determination. He just got unlucky, honestly. Both of the drivers went off, he just got the worst part of it, and I'm sure that he's gonna bounce back from the next race. He was absolutely disappointed in himself, but he's gonna be back. And I hope that there's a championship fight at least between the two McLaren drivers, because from what it seems right now, that car is a rocket ship and it could be a season that we had in 2023 with Red Bull. And there was this confusion where people were irritated with McLaren because they told Piastri to hold the positions. You heard the radios a little bit late on the broadcast. So basically what happened was that Norris and Oscar were going through a lot of back markers. So that's why they told Piastri to take it easy, because it's wet conditions. Anybody could go off, a back marker could go off, something would happen if they're trying to chase, and both of them could have ended up not finishing the race. And immediately once they were off the back markers, they told Piastri that keep it clean and you are free to race. So they are free to race. They are not choosing a number 1, number 2 driver right now. Don't worry about that. Now let's talk about some other notable moments in the race. Let's talk about the Williams pace, because honestly I did not believe in their results in the preseason testing. I was like, man, they are just going for all the glory runs. But they have made a decent car, because both of the cars qualified into Q3. Albon drove really well throughout the race, got a very respectable P5. And here's an interesting tidbit. After Sainz was out of the race, he was on the Williams strategy pit wall, assisting them on when to pit Albon and when not to do that when the conditions were changing. So that was really cool, but they have a clear shot at P5 at the Constructors' Championship. With Kick Sauber also, Hulkenberg did a great job. It was not about their pure pace, I think, but it was more about that they pitted at the right time, got the right strategy, and that paid off handsomely well, because you can clearly see they have so many points now and they took so long last season to get into points. And how can I forget my favorite driver, Lance Stroll? Got an amazing P6 after a disaster of a season in 2024. He drove really well in the first race of the season, and I hope that he continue this. Now with Stroll, it's very 50-50 in the rain. Apparently he's a very good driver in the rain. His first pole position was also in the rain, but sometimes he just forgets that he's good in rain. He just remembered it this race and we saw the results. And yeah, please, I see a lot of these comments. Please don't be that F1 fan. No, the 2025 car is not an Adrian Newey designed car. Newey is going to work on the 2026 car. So every time Aston performs well, don't say that it's Newey. Newey is going to work on the car, but man, Wait until next year. And just another useless fact, Kick Sauber, Williams, Aston all have more points right now on the constructors table than Ferrari. Stroll has more points than both Ferrari drivers combined. So yeah, not a great look for the team in red. And another notable moment that happened off track I would like to talk about is Lewis Hamilton's dad. You saw Isaac Hajar completely disappointed in himself. I think he was almost in tears after that embarrassing moment, and you saw Hamilton's dad consoling him. I think that was really sweet. If you guys don't know, Lewis is Isaac's like idol. He gets really shivery around Lewis, and he's like a big fanboy of Lewis. So for Hamilton's dad to comfort him when he was at his worst, I think it was really nice. But that was your Australian Grand Prix. I think it was a great opening race for the season. A lot of different things happened, a lot of unexpected results, and I'm really excited for the Chinese Grand Prix because once again it's going to be a mess because it's a sprint race weekend, so teams are only going to get one session. So yeah, let's see what happens there. And I'm gonna, as usual, do a live watch along during the race. So if you want to discuss the race with me while watching it live, you know you can tune into the stream. You should subscribe to the channel so that you're notified when all of this happens. I also post updates on my Instagram page or F1 guys, so check it out there. The F1 GP in memes is coming there really soon. That's it for the Australian GP race review. I hope I did a decent enough job. If you have some recommendations about how we should go around doing the race review, let me know in the comments, and I'll catch up with you guys after the Chinese Grand Prix. Hope we have another chaotic race there and some unexpected results.